George Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Rescue, rebalance and recover. No, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I haven't got hold of a copy of the late George Best's doctor's notes, nor advice from the Honourable Member for North Shields to his younger brother after a mauling at Prime Minister's questions. I refer to the 3 words at the beginning of the Chancellor's budget statement last week, which are so important in setting out the significance of that budget. Rescue, because indeed this coalition has had to rescue the British economy from a debt crisis which would have seen interest rates alone, and the repayment of interest rising to 70 billion a year. Rebalance, because the party opposite have tested to destruction the thesis that you can drive a modern economy based on public spending and an unsustainable boom and bust. And recover, because without a private sector-led recovery, we are condemned to a decade of stagflation. And I have to say, listening to debate yesterday and today, members opposite still don't seem to have got the 2 real golden rules of modern economics. The first is that every pound they come to the dispatch box and commit, claiming it as their own, has to be earned by the private sector in order for us to spend it on public services. And the second golden lesson, which we proved in the 80s and will now have to prove again, that cutting taxes on business raises the amount of money available to us in this House. The truth is, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that like a gambler forced to come home one day and fess up to his sad family that he has in fact not been working but living off debt and gambling with his credit card, the British economy now has to be weaned off the unsustainable boom fuelled by cheap credit under the party opposite. As in our personal lives, crises are always opportunities. And last week's budget was significant to me for this reason most of all, that it set out carefully the steps towards a sustainable recovery. And it set out the steps towards how we rebalance our economy. What, I hear members opposite ask, what will this look like? What will this rebalanced economy look like, and where will the jobs come from? Well, let me try and explain. The budget again contains the seeds. In the EIS reforms, the VCT reforms, and the encouragement for investors putting their own wealth at risk to start small companies, it will be, firstly, an enterprise economy. In the emphasis on the clean economy, on high technology jobs, on life sciences, it will, secondly, be a smart growth recovery. And in the emphasis on corporation tax reductions and sending a signal around the world that this country is open for business, it will be a global and export-driven recovery. And nowhere will this be cheered more loudly than in my own constituency of Mid-Norfolk and my own region of East Anglia, a region which for 40 years has been treated as nothing more than a commuter reservoir to feed the London economy. This is an area that has huge resources in offshore energy, in high-tech engineering, at the Hethel Centre, the headquarters of Lotus, in Norwich Research Park, a global centre of food science and agriculture, in UEA, a leading world-class centre of climate science, 40 miles down the road, in what the Americans would term one cluster, Cambridge University with all its strengths in science and research. How woeful that over the last 40 years we've treated this area as a commuting reservoir. Well, the people of East Anglia are ready to rise to the challenge. And with the investment in infrastructure that this government has laudably managed to secure from a very difficult financing settlement in terms of dualling the A11 and the money announced last week for regional rail, we have finally some hope that our area will be able to stand again and lead the economic recovery as we've done in the past. Norfolk, you will remember, and not need me to remind you, was the county that gave you the agricultural revolution, our finest military hero and our first Prime Minister. And it's a county that's been left behind and failed by the model of state dependency pursued by the party opposite. In championing the high technology and life science potential of our area, I should, Mr. Deputy Speaker, draw attention to the Register of Members' Interests. I'm proud to have come to this House after a 15-year career helping to start some of those businesses and to help entrepreneurs to take the risks to create new businesses. And I wanted particularly in the closing remarks to concentrate on the laudable support given to life sciences. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as we think about the markets around the world in which we have the chance to grow an economy, we should look no further than the recent Foresight report, which drew attention to the fact that world population is rising to 9 billion. And with it will come huge markets in food, in medicine, and in clean sources of energy. These are the markets of tomorrow, the markets in which this country has the potential to lead, and they're the markets which this budget will begin to sow the seeds of a sustainable recovery for. And the significance of this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is not, I believe, just economic. The budget last week set us on the road to a recovery of which we can be proud, a recovery which will give this country back a sense of purpose around the world. What finer mission is there than to be a small nation putting its experience in science, in trade, in enterprise, to the benefit of the developing world, to give them the hope that there is a model for them and that they don't have to take 200 or 300 years to reach the privileged position that we have. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's with huge pride that I support this budget and commend it to the House.